After I lost my job, my wealthy husband, Cole Peton, suddenly looked at me with that cold precision he reserved for Wall Street deals and said, "From now on, Abigail, we split everything 50-50. I'll only care for myself." The words slid across our marble dining table as casually as if he were discussing the weather. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply folded my hands around my coffee cup, stared into his sharp hazel eyes and said, "All right." He didn't expect what happened after that. If you believe marriage is about building a true partnership, not a transaction, join us by hitting that subscribe button. It's completely free and helps more women discover these meaningful stories. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let me know if you'd like a different tone or style. Now let's get back to the story. "Sign here," Cole added, sliding a stack of papers across the glossy surface between us. His voice carried the same authority he used when ordering his analysts around at Peton Capital. "I had my lawyer draft it this morning." The document bore the clinical title, Domestic Financial Restructuring Agreement. My coffee had long gone cold, untouched in my hands, as I stared at the bold header. I had been unemployed for exactly 3 days. 3 days. And my husband of 8 years had already consulted a lawyer to transform our marriage into a series of itemized columns. Cole leaned back, confidence radiating off him, and uncapped his Mont Blanc pen, the same one I had gifted him for our 5th anniversary. "From now on, we split everything 50-50. Rent, utilities, groceries. I'll only care for myself." The morning light streaming through our penthouse windows glinted off the gold trim of that pen. It was the same light that used to make our lazy Saturday mornings feel sacred. Me whisking hollandaise sauce for eggs Benedict. Him lounging with the Financial Times, occasionally sharing merger gossip from his hedge fund world. The flowers I arranged fresh every week, the precise temperature of his coffee, the tiny details that once felt like love, now reduced to unpaid labor neatly categorized. "You had your lawyer draft this up?" I repeated slowly, flipping through dense pages of subsections and clauses, "without even discussing it with me first?" "I wanted to have a framework ready," he replied, adjusting his Princeton class ring. That nervous tell, I'd noticed it on our very first date when he worried I'd caught on to his facade of perfection. "More efficient this way," he added, efficient. That word again. Everything in Cole's world was about efficiency and optimization. It was what made him brilliant in hedge funds and terrible at being a husband. The document was thorough. I had to give him that. Rent division, utility allocations, grocery expenditures, even formulas for calculating shared space usage fees. My husband had managed to turn our marriage into a spreadsheet. Meanwhile, I was still processing the humiliation of my layoff from Hartman Capital. Just 3 days earlier, my Monday had begun like any other. I'd kissed Cole goodbye, grabbed my usual vanilla latte from the cart outside our office building, and climbed the elevator up 23 floors. By noon, I was sitting in my manager Margaret's corner office, listening to the speech I knew wasn't really about strategic restructuring. "We have to make adjustments due to market conditions," Margaret said softly, pushing a severance package across her desk. She couldn't even meet my eyes. The truth was simple. The new CEO wanted his nephew in a senior role, and I was the casualty. "You're brilliant, Abigail. This isn't about your performance," Margaret murmured, but performance was everything to Cole. "When did you decide all this?" I asked him now, my voice steady as I placed the contract carefully back on the table. Inside, I fought the urge to crumple it into a ball. "It's been on my mind for a while," he said, finally glancing up from his phone. "Your job loss just clarified things. My father always said dependency breeds weakness." Ah yes, William Peton, his father. The tech entrepreneur who'd built his fortune on underpaid programmers, only to die at his desk at 58. He had left Cole millions of dollars, and a worldview that measured human worth and net worth. I thought back to Tuesday evening when I had told Cole about the layoff. He'd been in his home office, 3 glowing monitors painting his face in cold blue light. I had stood in the doorway, clutching my severance papers, feeling like a stranger in my own home. "I lost my job," I'd said softly. His fingers paused on the keyboard for exactly 2 seconds, then resumed. When? Yesterday. They gave me 2 weeks severance. He had turned in his chair then, expression unreadable. Don't worry. We'll figure something out. But even as he said the words, I watched him pull up our joint account on the center monitor, already calculating how long my final paycheck would last that night. He poured himself a Macallan 25, a single glass worth more than most people's monthly rent, and excused himself for a quick call that lasted 2 hours. I had sat alone in our penthouse living room, staring at Lake Michigan through the floor-to-ceiling windows, realizing that in his eyes, my unemployment wasn't something to support me through. It was something to manage, and now, 3 days later, he was presenting me with a contract reducing our 8-year marriage to line items and subclauses. What about Thursday night? I asked carefully. When you told me we were partners. Thursday's dinner had been his idea. He'd said we should strategize. I had worn the black dress he always loved, the one that made me feel powerful even when my career was crumbling. He had ordered Krug champagne without asking for my preference, the first time in 8 years he hadn't done so. And then, while other couples around us whispered and held hands, Cole launched into a presentation about restructuring our domestic arrangement for maximum efficiency. Now he tapped the contract again. We are partners. Equal partners. That's what this ensures. I looked at my husband, really looked. The perfectly styled hair, the Tom Ford suit on a Saturday, the mild impatience etched on his face as if I were a difficult client refusing to see reason. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this person and I had just been too in love to see? You know, I specialized in forensic accounting at Hartman, I said quietly. Something flickered across his face. Concern. Fear. But it was gone in a flash. What does that have to do with anything? Just reminding myself of my skill set, I murmured. Then, picking up his Mont Blanc, the gift I had once given with so much love, I signed the contract in perfect cursive. Abigail Matthews Peton. The last time I would ever sign that name. There, I said, sliding the document back across the marble. Equal partners. Cole smiled, satisfied, and immediately turned back to his phone. He didn't notice me discreetly photographing every page with my own device. He didn't notice me mentally cataloging every asset, every account, every hidden financial transaction I had pretended not to know about. He certainly didn't notice me texting my younger sister, Sophie. You were right. It's happening. Because while Cole thought he was restructuring our marriage, what he had really done was declare war. And in doing so, he had handed me the blueprint for exactly how to win it. Sophie's reply came instantly, finally showing his true colors. Document everything. My sister had never trusted Cole. Not since the night of our engagement party, when he had smugly corrected her French pronunciation in front of 50 guests, that I slipped my phone into my pocket, kissed him goodnight, and went to bed. Sleep, of course, never came. My mind kept replaying the signature, the contract, the cold calculation in his eyes. At 5 in the morning, I finally gave up the pretense. I slipped quietly from bed. Cole's side was already cold, the sheets barely disturbed. Through the closed door of his home office, I could hear his voice, smooth and confident, already on a call with Singapore about profit margins and market volatility. It was Saturday morning, and my husband was 3 hours into his workday. I padded to the kitchen, heart pounding, and found his laptop still open on the counter. The glow of the screen bathed the room in pale light. I wasn't proud of what I did next. But I wasn't ashamed either. The spreadsheet was titled, Household Reorganization Post-AL. My unemployment had been reduced to initials, and as my eyes skimmed the meticulous columns, I realized Cole had made a fatal mistake. He believed marriage was a business. He had no idea that I was about to beat him at his own game. The glow of Cole's laptop lit the marble countertop as I leaned closer, heart thudding in my chest. The spreadsheet bore a cold, clinical title, Household Reorganization Post-AL. AL stood for Abigail Layoff. My life, my career, my contribution to this marriage, reduced to 2 initials. The columns were meticulous. Pre-AL contributions charted my old salary, our joint expenses, the exact percentage I had covered. Post-AL sustainability model projected how much of a financial drain I would supposedly become now that I wasn't bringing in income. There were neat scenarios labeled. If Abigail finds work in 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. But it was the final column that made my stomach turn. Optimal resolution timeline. Cole had calculated down to the week how long it would take before he could justify leaving me. I snapped photos of every worksheet, my hand steady despite the churning in my gut. Each cell, each number was another piece of evidence. Then my eyes caught something else. A separate tab. The label read MGM Consulting. I clicked. The sheet opened with a list of recurring transfers. $3000 every month. Going back 6 months. The payee MGM Consulting, LLC. Something inside me snapped awake. MGM. My fingers flew across the keys. A quick search revealed the company had been registered 7 months ago. Managing member. Olivia Grace Mitchell. Olivia Mitchell. Cole's 28-year-old executive assistant. The one who texted him about urgent presentations at 11 at night. The one whose name I had seen pop up on his phone more times than I could count. The address tied to MGM Consulting wasn't a corporate office or even a shared workspace. It was the Meridian, a luxury apartment building downtown where the smallest units cost more than $4,000 a month, so that's where my husband's money had been going. The conference call with Singapore droned on from behind his office door, Cole's practiced laugh filtering through the wall. I closed his laptop carefully, setting it back exactly as I'd found it. And then I went to work. By the time Cole left for his Saturday golf game with Ethan Fitzgerald and 2 other Princeton friends, the dining room had transformed into my command center. OfficeMax had opened at 8, and I'd been their first customer, stocking up on binders, laminating sheets, and color-coded folders. The kind of supplies you'd expect in a law firm, not a penthouse kitchen. Going to the club, Cole said as he hefted his leather golf bag. He paused at the doorway, watching me arrange my materials on the table. What's all this? Organizing. I didn't look up. Being self-sufficient. He laughed, actually laughed, and left. The moment his Tesla hummed out of the garage, I rolled up my sleeves. 8 years of marriage meant 8 years of financial documents, tax returns, investment statements, credit card bills. Cole liked to think he was clever about hiding assets, but forensic accounting had been my specialty at Hartman. Finding money, tracking patterns, exposing gaps. That was what I did best. By the time his car pulled back into the garage at 1 in the afternoon, I had already assembled my masterpiece. A 47-page document I titled Marital Asset Utilization Framework. If Cole wanted to run our marriage like a business, I would give him the full corporate treatment. Section 1. Historical labor analysis. I cataloged every dinner party I'd hosted for his clients, every weekend wasted charming investors at golf tournaments, every thank you note I'd written, every gift I'd carefully chosen for his associates. All the invisible work I'd done to make him appear like a functioning human being instead of the emotionally hollow man he was. Section 2. Intellectual property contributions. The investment strategies I had suggested that he'd paraded as his own. The client connections he had gained through my Hartman network. The market insights I had casually shared over breakfast that somehow appeared, word for word, in his presentations. Section 3. Opportunity cost analysis. The promotions I had passed up to accommodate his travel schedule. The networking events I had skipped so I could host his mother, Victoria Peton. The professional development programs I had sacrificed in order to maintain his illusion of domestic perfection. I bound it all into a leather portfolio that looked far more expensive than it was. The sound of his golf shoes clicked across the marble floor as Cole returned. His face was flushed from the sun, and probably from a few drinks at the 19th hole. He paused, noticing my war room setup. "What is all this?" he asked, gesturing to the folders and laminated charts spread across the table. "Your copy," I said calmly, sliding the leather portfolio toward him with the same precision he'd used earlier when shoving his contract at me. He smirked, that patronizing grin I had once mistaken for charm. "Abigail, come on." "Page 12, I interrupted. "Start with section 3.2. Still smiling, he opened the binder. I watched the shift in his expression as his eyes landed on the header. Retroactive compensation for unrecognized labor contributions, 2016-2024. "This is," he started. "Thorough," I supplied. "Keep reading." His smile vanished entirely when he reached the total. $347,000. $347,000? You can't be serious. Page 36, I said evenly. Precedent cases for retroactive compensation in dissolved business partnerships. The phone in his pocket buzzed. He answered, putting it on speaker. It was Ethan Fitzgerald calling to thank him for covering the drinks. Ethan, Cole said, his voice strained. I need you to look at something. Legal opinion. Right now. Sure, buddy. Ethan's jovial voice crackled through the line. Send it over. I folded my arms and waited as Cole photographed page after page. His jaw tightened with each snap of the camera. Silence filled the dining room, broken only by the ticking of the ornate grandfather clock Victoria had given us as a wedding present. Finally, Ethan's voice came back, this time sober and professional. Cole, is this real? She signed my agreement this morning, so she created this, Cole muttered. No, I mean, are these numbers real? Did Abigail really handle all this? Cole's silence was answer enough. Ethan let out a low whistle. Legally, she's got you by the throat, man. You wanted a business arrangement, she gave you one. Honestly, based on what I'm seeing, she's undervaluing her contributions. You're supposed to be my friend, Cole snapped. I am your friend, which is why I'm telling you the truth. Either tear up both agreements and go back to being married, or prepare to write a very large check. Cole hung up without saying goodbye. He stood there for a long moment, gripping the portfolio so tightly the leather creaked. Then he turned and stormed off, slamming his office door behind him. The lock clicked into place and I sat back in my chair, staring at the neat rows of evidence I'd compiled. Not guilt, not regret, only clarity. This wasn't just a contract dispute anymore. It was a war. And Cole had no idea how prepared I was to fight. That night I barely slept. Not because of guilt, I had passed that stage already, but because my mind was racing. Cole thought he was the strategist in this marriage, the chess player who could see 3 moves ahead. He didn't realize I had been watching him play for 8 years, learning every gambit, every tell, every weakness. By 3 a.m. I crept out to the living room with my laptop. Cole's pride and joy had always been our smart home system. A $50,000 investment in automation. The future of living, he'd bragged, spending weeks programming zones, routines, and settings. Well, the future of living was about to become the battlefield. The master control app was still installed on my phone. Cole had never revoked my administrative access. Why would he? I'd never shown the slightest interest in his toys before. It took me 3 hours, plus a few YouTube tutorials, but by dawn I had reprogrammed everything. The apartment now had 2 distinct zones. Abigail zone and Cole zone. My zone ran on new passwords and biometric locks that recognized only my face and fingerprints. His zone retained his original access, but with creative restrictions carefully designed by me. The overlap areas, the spaces we supposedly shared equally, now required both our authorizations to function. I was back in bed pretending to sleep when Cole's alarm buzzed at 6. From the bathroom came a muttered curse. Abigail? Something's wrong with the shower. I stretched lazily. Mine works fine. Try resetting your access code. I listened to the sounds of him jabbing furiously at the control panel. Eventually the water started. Ice cold. I had restricted his hot water heater access to economy mode between 6 and 7 a.m. energy efficiency, as he liked to call it. By the time he came shivering into the kitchen, hair damp and jaw clenched, I was already there with my mug of coffee, scrolling through the morning news. The coffee maker won't connect, he said, glaring at the machine as though it had betrayed him. Oh, that's in my zone now, I explained, sipping slowly. Would you like to purchase a cup? I'm offering a special rate today. Only $8 for premium brew. His face went red. This is ridiculous. This, I replied smoothly, is the 50-50 arrangement you wanted. Equal division of assets. I took another long, satisfied sip. Your coffee maker is in your office. He stormed down the hall, and soon I heard the sputtering gurgle of the cheap Mr. Coffee machine I'd bought him at Target for $20. A fitting symbol of his new self-sufficient lifestyle. Saturday arrived with a visit from my sister Sophie. She drove down from Milwaukee in her 10-year-old Honda, and parked it next to Cole's gleaming Tesla in the garage. The contrast between the two cars was almost poetic, everything about our situation summarized in one parking space. When Sophie stepped into the penthouse, she stopped mid-sentence. The living room glowed with two distinct lighting schemes. My side bathed in warm amber from the smart bulbs, his side washed in sterile corporate blue. A clean, cold line divided the zones. "Abigail, what have you done?" she whispered. "Implemented Cole's vision," I said, hugging her. "Come on. Let me show you my side." As I walked her through the apartment, I could see her teacher's sensibilities twitching at every lavish surface. When we reached the kitchen, she froze at the refrigerator. A digital lock split the compartments. "You're joking," Sophie breathed. "He ate my meal prep at 2 a.m. Wednesday night. $60 of organic ingredients gone." I pulled up a clip on my phone. Cole in boxers illuminated by refrigerator light, shoveling food into his mouth straight from the containers. "This isn't healthy," Sophie murmured. Then I showed her my bank statements. The joint account Cole had drained to protect assets. The severance that had mysteriously been redirected to cover unexpected household expenses. The credit card he had canceled without warning. Her face hardened. "Oh, honey. He's trying to force you out. He's trying to break me," I corrected. "But he forgot. I learned from the best." The following morning, I decided to document Cole's self-sufficiency journey. He had announced, with a mix of bravado and irritation, that he was going grocery shopping. A first in our 8-year marriage. I waited 10 minutes, then followed discreetly. Whole Foods on a Sunday was crowded, perfect cover. I kept my distance, phone recording as Cole wandered the produce section like a lost tourist. He stopped in front of the cherries, holding up a small box marked $27. He stared at it for 5 full minutes before flagging down a teenage employee stocking apples. "Excuse me? Is this the normal price for cherries?" The boy glanced at Cole's $1,000 sneakers, then back at the fruit. "It's organic, sir. And imported. But $27? You could try regular cherries," the kid suggested. "They're $8. Cole hesitated, then tossed the expensive box into his cart anyway. Image over economics. At the meat counter it got worse. He ordered 8 pounds of Wagyu beef, without realizing the price was per pound, not total. The butcher raised an eyebrow but wrapped it anyway. Cole added truffle salt for $45, aged balsamic for $62, and something called heritage grains for $30, products I doubted he could define at BY checkout. His total rang up at $438.67. For one person. For 1 week. I was already back at the penthouse when he returned, struggling with the bags. "Need help?" I asked sweetly. "I've got it," he grunted, lugging the overpriced groceries to his side of the kitchen. He stuffed them into his designated compartments, including the freezer section I'd marked off with digital tape. Monday morning dawned bright and brutal. Cole had an 8 a.m. breakfast meeting with Japanese investors, crucial for his firm's expansion. He woke at 6, showered, still cold, and went to make breakfast. I watched remotely from my laptop, using the camera feed from the kitchen. He opened his refrigerator section. Raw Wagyu sat untouched, heritage grains unopened, truffle salt like a decorative paperweight. He tried every password combination he could think of to access my lock section where neatly prepped breakfast sandwiches waited. Abigail 1234, Anniversary 2016, Even I Love You. Each attempt failed. Finally, at 7:47 a.m. with panic creeping in, he placed a delivery order. $85 for eggs, toast, and coffee. The meal arrived at 8:23. By then, his investors had been waiting 23 minutes. That evening, I found him eating cereal for dinner. "The Wagyu went bad," he admitted sullenly. He hadn't known it needed to be cooked within 2 days of purchase. "For $100 of groceries," I remarked. "And you're eating cornflakes." He looked up at me, and for the first time in weeks I saw something crack in his facade. Not enough to change anything, but enough for me to know. The war was working. He set down his spoon, the cornflakes going soggy in the milk. Neither of us spoke. Then he pushed back his chair, retreated to his office, and slammed the door, leaving his bowl right there on the counter. Technically his side of the counter. But still. Old habits die hard. I cleaned up his mess anyway. And that's when I noticed the partially hidden paper under his abandoned Wall Street Journal. It was a credit card statement. One line item jumped out at me immediately. MGM Consulting $3,000. The same charge appeared every month, going back 6 months. $3,000. To a consulting firm I'd never heard of. While he'd been telling me we needed to tighten our belts, my severance had been swallowed up, and my credit card canceled. Meanwhile, he was funneling thousands to MGM Consulting. I took a photo, slid the paper back into place, and walked quietly to my laptop. The address of MGM Consulting wasn't some skyscraper in the Loop. It was the Meridian, a luxury apartment building, and the managing member of the LLC, Olivia Grace Mitchell, my husband's assistant. The woman he texted at midnight. The woman whose name he said with casual familiarity. The woman who, I now realized, had her rent covered by my husband while he demanded I account for every cent I spent on groceries. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about truth. And the truth was about to destroy him. It all clicked together like puzzle pieces snapping into place. The late nights at the office, the sudden urgent meetings. The way Cole started guarding his phone like it contained state secrets. Olivia Grace Mitchell wasn't just an assistant. She was the reason for the MGM transfers, the reason my severance was reallocated. The reason Cole looked at me with clinical detachment while secretly bankrolling her life. I began a new spreadsheet that night, labeling it suspicious financial activity. MGM Consulting was the first entry. And then fate handed me a gift. It was Tuesday night, 11:47 p.m. Cole was in the shower, steam hissing through the master bathroom. His phone lay charging on the nightstand, screen lighting up with a new message. I shouldn't have looked. But then again, he shouldn't have been siphoning money into his assistant's apartment. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. Olivia. I snapped a photo, timestamp clear, and filed it neatly into my growing evidence folder. Exhibit A, Emotional Assets Misappropriation. By the time Cole emerged in his Turkish cotton robe, I was back on my side of the bed, Kindle in hand, face calm. Who texted? I asked lightly. Work thing, he muttered, glancing at his phone. I caught the fleeting panic in his eyes before his mask slid back into place. Singapore markets. Singapore markets at midnight? Sending heart emojis. I didn't look up. Busy day tomorrow, he said, climbing into bed. Of course, I murmured, turning a page I hadn't read. Within minutes, his snores filled the room. I lay in the dark, mind whirring. Olivia wanted to see him tomorrow. Fine. Then maybe I should see too. Wednesday morning, Cole left early, mumbling something about breakfast with clients. As soon as his Tesla disappeared into traffic, I called in a favor. Janet, I need to borrow your visitor pass, I whispered. Abigail, what are you planning? My former colleague's sigh carried across the line. Research. 20 minutes later, she slid the pass across a cafe table in the lobby of Cole's building. The 15th floor is Cole's firm, she said. But you didn't get this from me. I smiled, slipping it into my bag. Of course not. But I didn't go to the 15th floor. I went to the parking garage. Cole's Tesla sat proudly in spot P47, right next to P48. A familiar white BMW with vanity plates reading Olivia 28. Subtle. At 12:15 the elevator dinged. Cole and Olivia emerged together, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. They walked with an intimacy that only came with practice, her head tilted back in laughter at something he'd said. His face looked more animated than I'd seen in months. I lifted my phone, capturing photo after photo. They drove to Brevard, the kind of restaurant without a sign, the kind where menus came without prices because clients who dined there didn't need to ask. Cole used to take potential investors there. Now he was taking his mistress. I was in my car, reviewing the photos, when someone tapped sharply on my window. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Victoria Peton stood there in her St. John suit and pearls, the very picture of old money and new judgment. My mother-in-law. The woman who had never quite approved of me, though she had always been too polished to say it outright. I rolled down the window. Following my son? She asked. Her voice carried no accusation, just curiosity. Victoria, I can explain. No need. She opened the passenger door and slid in, a waft of Chanel No. 5 surrounding her. I was at Brevard myself. Library Foundation lunch. Imagine my surprise seeing Cole with his assistant. We sat in silence for a moment. I know about Olivia, dear, she said finally, her eyes sharp. I've known for months. My stomach dropped. Why didn't you tell me? Victoria turned her head, her pearls glinting. Because Cole's father had his own Olivia once. Her name was Jennifer. 26, a marketing coordinator. Thought she was in love. I handled it differently than you are. What did you do? My voice was barely a whisper. I stayed quiet. Played the perfect wife. Let him have his fun. She adjusted her necklace. Then Jennifer got pregnant. William paid her to disappear, but the damage was done. The board found out. His reputation never recovered. I'm sorry, Victoria. Don't be. Her smile was sharp as glass. I got everything in the end. The houses, the investments, the company shares. Survival, Abigail. That's the real game. Her eyes studied me with new interest. But your way, your documentation, your digital warfare, the things Sophie told me about, it might be more effective. I froze. Sophie spoke to you? She called yesterday worried about you. But I told her not to be. You're doing well. Better than I ever did. For the first time since I'd known her, Victoria's smile reached her eyes. She reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. What's this? Security footage from the Peton building. 6 months worth. Amazing how often Olivia had to work late. How often Cole had to supervise. She pressed it into my hand. Call it a wedding gift. 8 years late. I stared down at the tiny piece of plastic. It felt heavier than my wedding ring had ever felt. Why are you helping me? I asked. Victoria checked her Cartier watch. Because Cole is making the same mistakes his father made. But with less style and even less discretion. At least William had the sense to be subtle. She opened the door then paused. I'm coming for tea tomorrow. Earl Grey. 2 o'clock. Have it ready. And then she was gone, leaving me sitting there, holding a flash drive full of proof from the woman who had spent 8 years making me feel like an outsider in her son's world. Thursday afternoon. Victoria arrived precisely at 2. Same pearls, different suit. The same expression of mild disappointment she had perfected through decades of charity boards and country club politics. Cole was conveniently at the office. Earl Grey? I asked. Please. I returned from the kitchen with a tray, along with my laminated price list, the one I'd made after Cole's 50-50 declaration. That'll be $12, I said crisply. Includes preparation, service, and cleanup. Victoria raised one perfectly arched eyebrow. Then, to my shock, she opened her Hermes wallet and counted out 12 singles, her manicured fingers trembling, not with rage but with suppressed laughter. $12, she said, laying them on the coffee table. For tea. Cole's policy, I said, pouring carefully. I'm just following the rules. Indeed. Her gaze locked on mine, cold and intense. Make the tea, dear. We need to talk. When I returned, she had already spread papers across my coffee table, old documents yellowing at the edges, some handwritten in fountain pen. 1987, she said, lifting a credit card statement. That's when William started his own restructuring of our marriage. Said I had become too dependent. I sat carefully, heart hammering. The statement showed charges to hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores, none of them for her. Jennifer, she said calmly. Blonde, ambitious, thought she was special. They always think they're special. Her laugh was bitter. I let him think he was clever. Let him make mistakes. And he did. So many mistakes. By the time he asked for a divorce, I had already moved 70% of our assets into trusts he didn't know existed. My jaw dropped. That's brilliant. Vindictive. Necessary. She shrugged. It was survival. But you, she tapped the flash drive still on the table. You're doing something smarter. She pulled out another document, this one thick with colored tabs. This is William's prenuptial agreement template. Cole used it for yours with modifications. She flipped to a section marked with red ink. Section 17B. Financial deception affecting marital assets. William insisted on it, thinking it would protect him if I ever hid money. Instead, it became his downfall. Her finger tapped the clause. Any undisclosed transaction over $5,000 that affects marital assets or stability can trigger immediate forfeiture of claims. $30,000 to Olivia. All documented. Victoria sat back, sipping her $12 tea. There's your ammunition, Abigail. Use it wisely. Victoria's words echoed in my head long after she left, her teacup resting empty on the table. Section 17B glowing in my mind like a loaded weapon. Financial deception over $5,000 could invalidate everything Cole thought he had secured. But Victoria had also warned me. Check everywhere, so I did. That evening, I wandered into Cole's sacred space, his home gym. He liked to pretend he was dedicated to fitness, but really it was just another place where he took endless conference calls, pacing between sets of half-hearted reps. His leather gym bag sat slouched in the corner, the one I had given him last year for his birthday. Something about the weight of it felt off as I lifted it. Slowly, I unzipped the top. Protein powder. A spare pair of running shoes. Earbuds. And then, tucked into a side pocket, something small and metallic. A digital recorder. My pulse quickened. I pressed play. Cole's voice filled the room, smooth and confident as always. She's been unstable since the layoff. Crying constantly, not sleeping, making bizarre accusations about affairs. Then another voice, Olivia's. Sweet, airy, smug. Then we need to be careful. If she finds out about the payments. She won't. Cole cut her off. She's too emotional to think clearly. Classic depression. My lawyer says if we can document mental instability, the prenup becomes irrelevant. How long before you can file? Olivia asked. Few more weeks, Cole replied calmly. Let her keep playing with her spreadsheets and locks. The more erratic she acts, the better. By the time she figures it out, I'll have everything lined up. Clean break, minimal settlement, and we can finally stop hiding. Olivia laughed, a tinkling sound I had once mistaken for professionalism. Poor thing. She really has no idea. None, Cole agreed. The recording went on 40 minutes of them planning my destruction, strategizing my supposed breakdown, reducing my life to a legal chess game. I sat on the bench, clutching the recorder, something hardening inside me. Not breaking, never again breaking. Hardening, condensing under pressure like coal becoming diamond. I copied the files to 3 separate drives, uploaded them to the cloud, and emailed them to my lawyer Rachel Nakamura, who I had quietly retained 2 days earlier. She specialized in high-net-worth divorces and had a reputation for destroying prenups with surgical precision. Then I slid the recorder back into the gym bag, exactly where I had found it. Cole didn't need to know I was 3 moves ahead. That night, parked outside a Starbucks where Cole couldn't monitor my Wi-Fi activity, I dialed Rachel. I found something, I said flatly. Evidence. Recordings. He and Olivia are planning to have me declared unstable. They're strategizing how to nullify the prenup. Rachel's voice sharpened. Send everything. And Abigail, from now on, document every conversation, every text, every transaction. Cornered men get dangerous. I understand. One more thing, she added. You'll need a forensic accountant. Someone ruthless. I know one. I work with Naomi Tanaka. She's the best. Expensive but worth every penny. How expensive? 5,000 retainer each. 10 total for both of us. My entire severance package. Cole thought I was using it for therapy. His smug way of suggesting I needed help adjusting. Book them both, I said. Tomorrow. The next morning, I walked into the law offices of Winters and Associates. The corner suite screamed old money and older secrets. Mahogany furniture, thick carpets, art worth more than most people's houses. Margaret Winters herself, the 60-something founding partner with silver hair cut into a perfect bob, greeted me at the lobby. She radiated power the way some people radiate perfume. Patricia, Rachel says you have an interesting case, she said, leading me into a conference room. Inside, Rachel waited, along with a petite woman tapping rapidly on a calculator. Naomi Tanaka. I spread my materials across the polished table. The contracts, the credit card statements, the photos, Victoria's flash drive, the digital recordings, my own spreadsheets cataloging 8 years of uncompensated labor. Rachel whistled softly. He actually had his lawyer draft this 50-50 agreement? His idea. His idea. He even signed it. And these recordings? His gym bag. I found them last night. Naomi's eyes lit up. Good find. Let's see what else he's hiding. She dove into the statements like a surgeon, her fingers flying across the keys. These MGM consulting payments? Just the tip of the iceberg. Look here, 2 years of transfers. Cayman accounts, Swiss numbered accounts. Not illegal, but definitely a violation of financial transparency in marriage. Can you trace it all? I asked. Give me a week, Naomi replied. Maybe less. Rachel flipped open Cole's firm's website. Peton Capital. And here we are. Executive Strategic Consultant, Olivia Mitchell. Interesting title for someone with 3 blog posts about manifestation. Margaret leaned back in her chair, a predatory smile spreading across her face. The prenup has Section 17B. Financial deception. Any undisclosed transaction over $5,000 affecting marital assets triggers forfeiture. $30,000 so far to Olivia, I said grimly. And whatever Naomi uncovers offshore. Rachel's smile widened. Your husband just handed us a gift. He built his own gallows. We're simply handing him the rope. For 3 hours we built strategy. Naomi would track every dollar. Rachel would document the deception. Margaret would draft the filings that would dismantle Cole's careful facade. When we finally closed the folders, Margaret's voice carried the weight of experience. Abigail, document everything from now on. Every time he breathes wrong. And be careful. Cornered animals lash out. I nodded. I'm ready. But inside I wasn't just ready. I was sharpening. That night, Cole announced he was flying to Boston for a conference. I knew better. I had already seen the hotel reservation on his phone. The Ritz-Carlton. 2 rooms booked. One for him. One for Olivia. By the time his Tesla pulled out of the garage, I had transformed our dining room into command central again. My war wasn't emotional anymore. It was tactical, methodical, backed by law, numbers, and evidence. Because Cole hadn't just underestimated me, he had armed me. He thought he was setting the stage for my downfall. Instead, he had scripted his own destruction, and I was about to play my role flawlessly. Saturday morning, I was savoring the rare quiet of the penthouse when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Sophie had gone back to Milwaukee, and Victoria never arrived unannounced. When I opened the door, Olivia Grace Mitchell stood in the hallway. She was 5'9" of arrogance wrapped in designer jeans, her glossy hair gleaming like she'd just stepped out of a salon. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. I need to get some files from Cole's office, she said, already stepping forward like she owned the place. He's in Boston, I replied flatly, blocking the doorway. I know. He gave me permission. No, she blinked. Excuse me. No, Olivia. You can't come in. If Cole wants you to have files, he can hand them to you himself. At the office. During business hours. Her lips tightened. She wasn't used to hearing no. You don't understand, she hissed. These are important documents for Monday's meeting. Then Cole should have remembered them, I said, starting to close the door. Her manicured hand pressed against it, shoving it open again. Her voice dropped to a whisper, though my phone, already recording, picked up every word. Look, maybe you should start packing. Cole promised me this place would be mine soon. No need for you to embarrass yourself by holding on. My grip on the doorframe didn't falter. How soon? A few weeks. Maybe less. Depends how quickly his lawyer can prove you're unfit. The crying, the paranoia, the ridiculous locks and spreadsheets. It's all documented. Classic mental instability after job loss. A textbook case. She smiled, all teeth and cruelty. Everyone can see it. I kept my face perfectly neutral. Is that what Cole told you? It's what's obvious, she replied, stepping back smugly. I'll tell him you were uncooperative again. I let her walk to the elevator, heels clicking confidently. Just before the doors closed, I called out, "Olivia." She turned, eyebrow arched. "Check your email." The doors shut inside her inbox. At that very moment, was the cease and desist letter Rachel had prepared in advance. It demanded she stop harassment, stop attempting unauthorized entry into my residence, and stop interfering in my marriage. Copies had gone to Peton Capital's HR department and their legal team. My phone buzzed immediately. "Cole, Boston, what did you just do?" I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded Naomi's preliminary findings to Rachel. Cole had been billing Peton Capital for Olivia's consulting fees while she provided no actual services. The invoices were fake, the work fabricated. It wasn't enough for criminal charges, Cole was too careful for that, but it was more than enough to trigger an internal investigation. By Sunday night, Naomi had found something even darker. She called me herself, her voice sharp with urgency. "Abigail, you need to sit down." I sank into a chair, clutching the phone. "What is it?" "6 months ago, Cole took out a life insurance policy on you. $2 million. The air left my lungs. "What? $2 million? You're the insured, he's the beneficiary." Combined with the narrative he and Olivia are building. Unstable, depressed, paranoid. It's a pattern. The silence stretched until I forced words out. "He would never." Naomi cut me off. "He's moving money offshore. He's covering Olivia's rent under fake invoices. He's plotting to declare you mentally incompetent. And now he's insured your life for more dead than alive. Tell me what that sounds like to you." My hand trembled as I hung up. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was survival. Monday morning, I sat in the conference room at Winters & Associates with Rachel, Naomi, and Margaret. Evidence was spread across the table like a battlefield map. Contracts, photos, spreadsheets, recordings, Olivia's smug confession, Victoria's flash drive. Naomi tapped a highlighted column. "Here. MGM Consulting, 30,000 documented. Offshore transfers, 1.2 million hidden. Life insurance policy, 2 million. Combined, it's catastrophic." Rachel's eyes glittered. "And Section 17B makes it our golden ticket. Any undisclosed transaction over $5,000 tied to marital stability triggers forfeiture. Cole hasn't just crossed the line. He's obliterated it." Margaret leaned forward, voice like a gavel. "We file this week. Quietly, strategically. No warning. By the time he realizes, the walls will already be closing in." I nodded slowly, absorbing their words. Rachel turned to me. "Abigail, this is war. You need to be ready for escalation." "I've been ready," I said, my voice steady. "For weeks. And I meant it." That night, the penthouse felt strangely calm. My side glowed in warm amber light. Cole's still an icy corporate blue. A visual reminder of the life we had split down the middle. Cole thought he had stripped me down to nothing. A dependent wife, jobless, fragile. Instead, he had given me everything I needed to destroy him. His arrogance, his paperwork, his mistress, his own voice plotting my downfall. I stood at the window, staring out at Lake Michigan glittering under the moonlight. My reflection stared back. No longer the woman who had once signed his contract with shaky loyalty. No. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone sharper, harder, someone who had learned the most brutal truth. When a husband treats marriage like a hostile takeover, the only way to survive is to fight like a corporate raider. Tomorrow, the filing would begin, and when it did, Cole Peton's empire, his money, his reputation, his carefully curated life would begin to collapse. And I would be the one holding the pen that signed it all into motion. Cole left for Boston Friday morning, suitcase in hand, tie knotted with the kind of precision that suggested more than just a business trip. He told me it was a weekend conference. But I'd already seen the Ritz-Carlton confirmation on his phone, 2 rooms booked under his name. One for him, one for Olivia. I didn't confront him. Not yet. His arrogance was my weapon now, and every step he took dug his own grave deeper. Instead, I turned my focus to Monday, the quarterly partners' dinner at Peton Capital. The one event where appearances mattered more than performance, where reputations were cemented or destroyed. Cole had forgotten to remove me from the guest list. That was his mistake. The night of the dinner, I stood before the mirror, sliding the final clasp of my black Valentino dress. I had bought it for myself after my last promotion at Hartman, the one Cole claimed made me look too powerful for cocktail parties. Tonight, that was exactly the impression I wanted to be. By the time Cole stumbled into the kitchen, still half distracted by his useless coffee machine, I was already slipping my lipstick into a clutch. "Where are you going?" he asked sharply, eyes narrowing at my dress. "Work meeting," I said smoothly. "Potential consulting client." He scowled, but his phone buzzed and pulled him away. He didn't notice the process server waiting outside our door. When he opened it, still in his robe, the man handed him a thick envelope. "You've been served." Cole's face went pale as he tore it open, rage bleeding into disbelief. "You're divorcing me?" "You wanted a business dissolution," I said, adjusting my earrings. "I'm simply formalizing it." His hands trembled as he flipped through the pages, blanching when he reached the evidence: the MGM transfers, the offshore accounts, the life insurance policy. "How did you?" "Forensic accounting was my specialty," I said, echoing words I knew he remembered. His phone began to vibrate wildly, emails and calls pouring in. I left him standing in the doorway, robe disheveled, empire cracking that I had somewhere else to be. The grand ballroom at the Palmer House shimmered with chandeliers and polished silver. Dozens of partners and their spouses mingled, every handshake masking calculation. I spotted Jonathan Peton, Cole's cousin and managing partner, near the bar. He blinked when he saw me. "Abigail? We didn't think." "I wouldn't miss it," I cut in smoothly. Pulling an envelope from my clutch, I lowered my voice. "This is about Cole." Jonathan guided me to a quiet alcove. "This is about the divorce papers. This is about embezzlement." I handed him Naomi's neatly bound report. MGM Consulting. 30,000 billed over 6 months. Fake invoices. The consultant is Olivia Mitchell. She hasn't provided a single legitimate service. Jonathan's face hardened as he scanned the documents. "This could ruin the firm's reputation." "Only if it goes public," I said calmly. "What happens next is up to the partners." Across the ballroom, Cole arrived, with Olivia on his arm. "Bold. Reckless." Gasps rippled through the crowd as wives whispered, eyes narrowing at the sight of the assistant parading in like she belonged. Jonathan closed the folder, his mouth grim. "What do you want?" "Nothing from the firm. This is between me and Cole. But you need to know where company money has gone." Then I left him holding the evidence, watching the whisper spread like wildfire. Cole found me later at the dessert table, face flushed with alcohol and fury. Olivia lingered behind him, less smug now under the icy stares of the room. "You're destroying everything," he hissed. "I'm documenting everything," I corrected, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "There's a difference." Before he could retort, a voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. "This is my father's firm." Heads turned. Victoria Peton stood in the doorway, flawless in Chanel, flanked by a man whose suit screamed legal authority. She strode forward, her heels striking marble like gunshots. "It was your father's firm," she said coldly. "Before you dishonored his name with your sloppy affair, and even sloppier embezzlement." The room fell silent. Olivia actually stepped behind Cole, as if he could shield her from his mother's icy glare. "Mother," Cole began. "I am here," Victoria interrupted, her voice carrying to every corner, "as trustee of the Peton Family Trust, to inform you that effective immediately, you are removed from the board. Conduct unbecoming a Peton." "You can't." "I can. I am. I have." She turned to Jonathan. "You have an announcement?" Jonathan's face was grim. "The partners will convene tomorrow. Until then, Cole is suspended pending investigation of financial irregularities." Cole's phone buzzed again, emails flooding in as clients severed ties. He stood frozen, the carefully built image of power crumbling into dust. Victoria's gaze was merciless. "Your father would be appalled. Not at the affair, God knows he had plenty, but at how poorly you executed it. Fake invoices? At least William's mistresses could type." Olivia bolted, heels clattering as she fled the ballroom, Abandoning Cole to his humiliation, he stood alone, surrounded by people who had known him since childhood. Every whisper now sharpening into judgment. I lifted my clutch, walked past him and leaned close enough to whisper, "Check your email." Rachel's message was waiting in his inbox. Settlement conference Thursday. Bring your checkbook. By the time I stepped into the elevator, Jonathan was already pulling partners into an emergency meeting. Cole's career, reputation, and family legacy were collapsing all at once. And I had never felt lighter. The settlement conference was held in a bland office designed to drain the will to fight. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, stiff chairs. Cole sat across from me, thinner than I'd ever seen him, his expensive suit hanging loose, dark circles beneath his eyes. Beside him was a weary attorney who looked like he charged by the hour less than Cole used to spend on a bottle of wine. "My client is prepared to offer," the lawyer began. Rachel's voice cut and sharp as glass. "My client's terms are non-negotiable." She slid the packet across the table. "The penthouse, half of all assets, including offshore, and $347,000 in retroactive compensation." Cole's lawyer leaned into his ear, whispering fast, probably explaining what a public trial would expose. The fake invoices, the affair, the life insurance policy. All of it. "This is extortion," Cole muttered hoarsely. "This is mathematics," I replied, savoring the echo of his own words. "Sign it or we go to trial." For a long moment he just stared at me, the man I'd once loved, who had once sworn he couldn't live without me. Then finally, his hand shook as he scrawled his name. The bold strokes of his youth were gone. In their place, a broken, defeated line. 8 years of marriage ended on a trembling signature. The months that followed passed in a blur of boxes and paperwork. I kept the penthouse but stripped it of Cole's cold minimalism. With Sophie's help, I filled it with warmth. Second-hand furniture that had history, plants that breathed life into the rooms, art from local painters instead of investment catalogs. For the first time in years it felt like home. My home. One morning, Sophie texted me a screenshot. It was Olivia's Instagram. She was ranting about cheap men in Chicago, complaining that a guy had invoiced her for half a dinner date, calculating down to the penny. The irony was too rich. I laughed until tears blurred my vision. Karma had a way of serving itself cold. As for Cole, word spread quickly. He'd been forced out of Peton Capital, his reputation shredded. He landed at a small personal injury firm, a far cry from the empire he thought he'd inherit. He looked older, thinner, a man cut adrift from the very status that had defined him. I no longer felt anger when I thought of him, just emptiness. But survival wasn't enough. I wanted purpose. That was how Equal Means Everything was born, not a law firm, but a consulting service dedicated to helping women recognize and document financial abuse. Within weeks of launching, inquiries flooded in. Victoria, of all people, referred my first high-profile client, Senator Catherine Walsh. For years, she'd raised children and run campaigns while her husband controlled every dollar. Sitting in my office, formerly Cole's gym, she wept as she admitted she couldn't even buy groceries without approval. "Let me show you something," I told her, spreading out my own documentation. "This is how I proved it. This is how you build your case." Within months, Catherine had her own accounts, her own agreements, her independence. Her story became my first success. Word spread through Victoria's country club network faster than scandal ever could. 6 months after the divorce, Victoria invited me to the Peton Foundation's annual gala. The irony wasn't lost on me. The family once defined by financial deception now raising money for women's financial literacy. I wore bold red. Not for Cole, not for revenge, but for myself. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, a sea of familiar faces. Some curious, some wary, some calculating their own fragile marriages. "Abigail," Victoria called, her voice warm in a way I had never heard before. "Come, I want you to meet someone." She introduced me to 3 women, each trapped in financial cages, each needing help. By the time dinner was served, I had 5 new clients. Then I saw him. Cole stood by the bar, thinner, smaller, a ghost of himself. Madison was gone. His drink trembled in his hand as he approached me. "You look," he faltered, "happy." I am. He stared into his glass, swirling the ice. I understand now what I did. How I treated you. I understand. I could have been cruel. I could have reminded him of every humiliation. Instead, I said simply, understanding and experiencing are two different educations. His eyes clouded. He nodded once and walked away. Minutes later, Victoria appeared at my side. They're about to announce the Community Impact Award, she said, her hand warm on my arm. The announcer's voice rang out. The Peton Foundation is proud to present this year's Community Impact Award to Abigail Matthews for her work with Equal Means Everything, providing financial abuse consulting to women in need. The applause rose as I stepped onto the stage, award in hand. For a moment, I looked out over the sea of faces, some supportive, some calculating, some skeptical. And in the front row, Victoria smiled at me, mouthing one word. Daughter. I spoke into the microphone, my voice steady. Financial abuse doesn't always look like control. Sometimes it looks like equality. Sometimes it hides behind words like fairness. Sometimes it comes with a spreadsheet and a contract. But abuse is abuse, whether it's measured in bruises or in dollars. Equal means everything. Not equal division, but equal worth. Equal respect. Equal partnership. That's what we help women find. Not just financial freedom, but the understanding that they deserve both love and respect. The room was silent. Then the applause rose, warm, genuine, real. Later that night, I caught my reflection in a ballroom mirror. I didn't see the woman who once signed away her power with Cole's pen. I didn't see the wife who brewed his coffee every morning for 8 years. I saw someone entirely new. Someone who had learned that the sweetest revenge isn't destroying the one who betrayed you. It's building something better from the ashes they left behind. My phone buzzed with another inquiry through my website. Another woman needing help. Another chance to turn a 50-50 nightmare into a new beginning. As I left the gala, award in hand, the Chicago night felt wide open, bright, endless, mine. For the first time in years, I was free. Thank you for following this story till the end. If you found this an emotional journey of betrayal, justice, and inner strength, please help RevengeAmy reach its first 1,000 subscribers. Just a like and subscribe. Your support will be a great motivation for us to continue bringing more inspiring stories. Click subscribe today and be a part of this journey. See you in the next stories.